we would just have very open and honest conversations with our early team, and we still do, about what our goals were, what our vision was for the company, why my brother and I were not at that time looking to give away equity in the company, that our life savings had been dumped into this, et cetera, just being very transparent with them. And the feedback that came back to us was great. People felt that they could trust us. They felt that we would tell them the truth when things were going well, when things were not going well. And over time, that trust, for the longest time, we didn't have ownership as value, and I didn't even use that word really to describe what we were trying to create. And as I read more and learned more, we decided to label it. It's one of the values at our company. So I'd say trust is a big one.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? Do you think about getting your employees to make decisions, to own the results, to own the process? Do you want them to show up empowered? Do you want them to trust you more? Well, that starts with you. When you think about being the leader that your team deserves, you want them to feel this sense of ownership about the work. There's a lot of pieces to that. I've been talking about that for ages on the podcast, but today we talk with Sam Eitzen. He is the co-founder of the Snap Bar. They grew at over 947% over a 3-year period. That put them at 478 on the Inc. list. Really impressive growth over the last 3 years. How'd they get there? They got their employees to think like owners. They encouraged them to have the sense of ownership. Ownership is a part of their values. Today, we talk about some of the details behind how they got there and why it was necessary. One of the things that you should know as a leader is that when you get people to feel like owners, without the financial tools that are available, you will have a loyal team and you will be considered a great leader. Now, here's the interview with Sam. Sam, how are you?
Good, Gene. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you on the podcast. It really is a new time here that we're having to lead differently. But before we jump into that, let's talk about your company. Tell us about the Snap Bar.
Yeah. Well, Snap Bar is an event services provider. Not an amazing time to be an event services provider, but that's what we've done for the past 7 years. It's been good. We essentially rent photo booths and selfie stands to live or in-person events around the country, from conferences to marketing activations, et cetera.
Love the idea. I've been to events where they have these little places to take photos and put them on your social profiles. So that's what it is?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it started a while ago as the primary social media driver. Let's get branded content to social media. That's still a big part of it. When we first started, we were basically serving weddings only, but over time that shifted, and now about 85% of our business is corporate. And still branded content to social media is a big important piece, but also legal data collection. So having people in this experience sign up for news about a launch, et cetera. Oftentimes these experiences or these photo really activations are branded around a particular theme or marketing message. So it's shifted in 7 years, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, we're going to dive into this. I want to get this out of the way first, because I know that growing a company's fast is not everyone's idea, but you made the Inc. 500.
We did.
I look at your Inc. number. You made the Inc. 500 just by a few.
Just by a few. We were lucky. Yeah.
But it's very impressive, because what that is, for those of you that don't know, it's a 3-year run rate of revenue. You had revenue over a couple of $1 million in sales, but
Yep.
You grew at over 947% in 3 years.
Yeah. It was a crazy ride, and we're bootstrapped too. So it was even a little wilder to fund that growth ourselves.
I know you met with my team, Sarah, who asked you a question about, what are one of the core factors of your growth? And you said ownership. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people think ownership means, well, you have ownership and maybe you have some other co-founders. Tell us what you mean by ownership.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, in true ownership at our company, the actual ownership of the business is split between my brother and myself. He's my co-founder, and it's 50-50. So I'm not talking about that kind of ownership, but it is important. When we decided to really start growing our business, which was actually 3 years into when it was founded, we had done it for 3 years part-time, and then worked our regular career jobs during those first 3 years. Both quit at the same time and went full time and started building out a team. We realized how much we disliked micromanaging and just honestly management in general. In the early days, we were bad at it. We didn't know what we didn't know. And we had never been managers at our other jobs. We'd worked for startups. So it was just hustle, hustle, hustle. And we were good at that, but managing people was a lot more difficult and we didn't know. So we started by saying, we need to find people that are self-starters or kind of can run themselves. And that, I think, was pretty immature thinking in the early days. Over time, it morphed into, okay, what we really wanted to do was give people the ability to make their own decisions and think for themselves to help grow our company, because we could not effectively be involved in every decision that's made, every meeting or every team that we were hiring for during those growth years.
And that's a really good point there, because ownership is not just financial. A lot of people think it's about stock shares, and those things do improve the loyalty of someone and their ability to think for themselves and put themselves out on the line. But you're doing this with a whole bunch of employees, like 30 plus, that don't have any percentage of ownership.
No.
When you think about that, there's more to it than just empowering them. I know that's the way I kind of think of the two things you just mentioned is have make decisions and to really have their own opinions about things. What other elements go into this idea of ownership?
I think trust is the biggest one. So when you give equity away in your company, which, the only reason we didn't in those early days was because we were bootstrapped and we didn't have much to give away. It wasn't worth anything. It didn't even seem like an attractive proposition at the time. We weren't VC backed or anything like that. So equity in this thing would have meant nothing. So from the get-go, we needed to hire people who were going to do a great job for what we paid them. And then, but really to unlock it, which how do they go above and beyond? How do we make them owners without actually giving away equity? Because we weren't in a position to do so. So trust was the biggest thing for us. We would just have very open and honest conversations with our early team. And we still do, about what our goals were, what our vision was for the company, why my brother and I were not at that time looking to give away equity in the company, that our life savings had been dumped into this, et cetera, just being very transparent with them. And the feedback that came back to us was great. People felt that they could trust us. They felt that we would tell them the truth when things were going well, when things were not going well. And over time, that trust, for the longest time, we didn't have ownership as value. And I didn't even use that word really to describe what we were trying to create. And as I read more and learned more, we decided to label it. It's one of the values at our company. So I'd say trust is a big one.
Hold on for a second. If you want more trust, one thing that you can do is trusting your employees more. If you want them to trust you, right? You want them to really trust the organization and the strategies and the processes, then you've got to demonstrate that trust. You've got to give it first. This is a place where you lead by example. If you want to micromanage your people, you're literally telling them that you don't trust them. Think about that for a second. And if you want to increase the level of trust inside your organization, you've got to lead by example by trusting them first. Back to the interview. Well, I have also looked at this too, and trust is one of those core elements inside my research. And the transparency element to it is something I think a lot of people are afraid of. They're afraid to trust people with that data or the knowledge financially. Do you open up everything transparently, or where do you draw the line?
Everything but essentially access to the bank account. Although even team members of ours have credit cards and things like that. So we don't talk about how much we've saved up over the years or what our cash reserves are in rainy day funds, but everything else at the company, every dime we earn, everything that we spend, is basically publicly available. Most people don't really care. They know that they have access to it if they needed to, but yeah, it's pretty open.
When you think about this, trust goes both ways. We know that we want our employees to trust us, but you have to trust them. How you had to work on your own psychology or mindset around trusting them so that they are trusted to fail and move and pick up the pieces and move forward?
Oh, 100%. I'm an Enneagram 8. I'm hard-headed. I'm kind of stubborn. I've just always been that kind of entrepreneurial, hard-nosed guy. And so it's always been a struggle for me when someone doesn't line up with how I view the world and how I do work. And I tend to overwork and push myself to the extreme. And I'm not saying those are good things. That's just my bent. And I realize that about myself. And so again, when I was a little younger and we were just new at running this company, when people would be hanging out and chatting and not at their desk working, you just wonder, oh, does this happen all the time? Because we're not paying attention to everyone. Or if someone showed up late, you wonder, oh man, I wonder what the reason is. And those are just those early kind of insecure moments where you realize, you know what? If you actually want to grow a company, you have to completely abandon that type of thinking. Just write it off. It doesn't matter. There's little action. I mean, just the fact that we were focusing on those small things was kind of a testament to the fact that we did not have a really great idea of how we wanted to grow this thing. And again, it's all been a process over the past 7 years, but the more we read and the more my brother and I discussed, we decided, yeah, we have to trust these people. There's no other option. So we stopped tracking hours, paying attention to what they were doing during the day. In one sense, like really just gave them that freedom. And it changed everything for me. Also, my stress levels went way down just because trying to manage and figure out in my head what other people were doing with their time and all that was just a complete waste of time.
No, I know a lot of people have different perspectives on this. So I'm kind of curious where you come down. Do you worry about time at all with your employees, or you worry about results that they're doing?
Yeah, I worry about like results and contribution to the company and the culture here. We don't have a hard sales background. So when I say results, I don't mean meeting your numbers every month, but if you are contributing, if you are getting things done, if you're being shouted out and praised by other team members for the way that you're helping them, serving them, going above and beyond, then amazing, right? I don't care whether you showed up half an hour later, left half an hour early. I wouldn't even know if you did, right? Like today, we have 3 different kind of distinct office areas. So there's less visual kind of, I don't even know what to call it, but we just don't see each other as much. And so we're forced now to absolutely just trust that people are doing the right thing.
Now wait just a second. Sam just talked about contributing to culture. Have you taken the time to think about the people that you're hiring and how they will contribute to the culture that you're building? You as the leader really have ownership of the culture that you're shaping. The culture that you're shaping is based on the people that you're adding to the mix. And it also depends on the practices or rituals that you have amongst the people, how they treat each other, how you treat them, how much you trust you have. All of these elements go into the culture. Your job as a leader is to bring in the right people and create the right systems, the right practices that allow that culture to flourish. Back to the interview. When you think about, leading today, I'm sure you've had to evolve over the years. What's one defining moment you can think about where your leadership had to really shift to become the leader you are of a fast growth company?
Yeah, maybe about a year and a half ago, our leadership team read one of Brené Brown's books, Dare to Lead, as a group. And we went through the workbook. And it was about vulnerability. And that was a big defining kind of improving moment for myself. Because again, my bent is the hard-headed kind of hustler guy that could just that thinks that he could take everything on and never wants to admit weakness and never wants to admit failure. And it's still something I struggle with because I'm by far, I'm nowhere near perfect, but that was a big realization for me, was just be honest about your mistakes, just be honest about the struggle, how difficult it is, the fear. I even started doing that more publicly on LinkedIn, and my posts got way more traction, way more. I had people direct messaging me thanking me for being open about the stress or the burden or the pressure that I was feeling. And so I've really leaned into it because I saw some really positive reactions from that. And it's helped, I think, the team open up with me more and realize that they can also be vulnerable and be open about what's going well, what's not going well, when they're having a good week or just a bad week.
It's hard, but it is a part of courage, right? Having the courage to really share what's really going on in your mind without the fear that your employees are going to judge you as being weak.
Yeah. I find that being self-deprecating in an honest and good way, not in a jokey way, is actually really, really effective. That my team knows that I am far from perfect and that there's a ton that I don't know still, and that I'm not very good at managing people, gives them a lot of grace with me because they know about my areas of weakness. And I also think, though, that it builds that ownership and the trust, because now they realize that I'm just as lacking in so many various areas as they are. And we are kind of in it together, figuring it out as we grow a company together.
I want to dive deeper into this idea of ownership, because that's what the whole theme of this is how to create employee ownership regardless of your position in the company. What rituals or practices do you have as it relates to values or meetings or anything that you could share with us that you do on a regular basis that reinforce the sense of ownership?
Yeah. It started, maybe a really good time to begin some of this was 2.5 years ago. My brother and I had 9 values. They were ill-defined. Some of them were really not values at all. And our team made us aware of it because, one, none of them had memorized the 9, and my brother and I had a hard time actually saying what they were. And so the very first time we ever went on a company retreat, we decided to rethink the values of our company with the entire full-time team that we had. Not as a leadership team even, but opening it up to every single person that worked for us, whether they were in the warehouse or, just new at two months old at the company kind of thing. And that was incredibly, I don't know if about powerful is the right word, but it was really cool to see everybody contribute to what they felt or what they saw our company really valued. So we narrowed it down to 5. Some translated over. Then at that same retreat, we defined them. So we wrote out sentences that we all agreed on in meetings that really kind of spelt out what we meant by creativity or beauty, because we have 5 one-word values, and it was great. It was really good result. I think people felt incredibly included and trusted to coming up with the values of a company that's not yours is kind of a weird thing, right? Like, we weren't trying to invite people into this process. So the next year at the next company retreat, we decided to make them kind of actionable in that, there's a specific word, like we operationalized them. I think that's the word. We had people write out very specifically how various little pieces of their work day to day kind of feed back into these values that we have. And at this retreat, we wrote hundreds and hundreds of Post-it notes about little specific things that we do that showcase how I display ownership, how I display care, how I display like beauty, or how I'm like valuing beauty, which is another one of our values. And we condensed all those and then operationalize them so that now we have a sheet that anyone can look at whenever they get hired at the Snap Bar that basically kind of spells out, this is how in your work you take ownership. This is how in your work you are creative. And this year at our company retreat, we took it a step further and started talking about our why. Like, why do we exist as a company? And that funny enough is only being developed and really kind of fleshed out 7 years into our existence, because when we started, it was kind of an accidental thing. We stepped into a photo booth business, didn't really know anything about it. And only over time have we become more clear about what we want to contribute to and in the world and in the world of work.
Sam, I really appreciate you going through this with me. One last question for you is, how do you continue to evolve as the leader your team deserves?
I read a lot. I have mentors. I ask them for honest feedback about where I'm at. I've also tried to create, and the team here at the Snap Bar has been incredible with this, a culture where people can tell me what I'm not good at or where they'd like to see me improve. So one of my questions every single week for the people that I have a one-on-one rapport with are, what can I be doing to be better for you? How can I help you? Or how can I improve to better serve you? And a lot of weeks there's nothing there, or maybe they'll say, I think you're doing a great job. But some weeks they'll give very specific feedback about something I did that was not great, or that they want to see different next time. And those have been incredibly helpful, just as kind of like, I don't know, metrics to follow for myself, as to make sure I'm improving for them.
Perfect. Well, Sam, I appreciate you being here on the show, talking about the Snap Bar and the growth you've had and your journey of leadership.
Thank you, Gene.
Fantastic interview. I love talking to people about getting and raising the sense of ownership across the company. This really is a big part of leadership. I've seen leaders that really embrace this, see phenomenal change across the loyalty of the company, and you will too. If you have any questions about what ownership is, what the formula behind it, you can go to a quiz that I put together called the Leadership Quiz. Spells just like you sound it, theleadershipquiz.com. And you can actually rate yourself on all of the factors inside this research. I've had over 500 conversations with people like Sam, and we put that into the leadership quiz so that you can rate yourself. If you have any questions about your own leadership, make sure you reach out to me, Gene at genehammett.com. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.